Welcome to Move Your Mind. My name's Nick Bracks, and this is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. Do you know that feeling of having a dream only to pursue it, and a week, a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years later, you lose focus, you get frustrated, you don't see the results, and you stop enjoying the actual pursuit of what you really wanted to do. You lose track of why you even wanted it, and you quit. I was fortunate to interview Peter Murphy, who is a very talented author. He's been writing for most of his life. He's published so many books, and he really talked about the simple philosophy of falling in love with the process. And it sounds easy, but it's really not. And after having the success that he's had, to still be getting up every morning and just purely enjoying the pursuit of writing and having that discipline to do it, I found it so inspiring, and it's clear to me why he's had the success that he's had and why he is mentoring so many people in this field. He was born in Wales and grew up in New York, where he operated heavy equipment, managed a nightclub, and drove a cab. He's the author of 11 books and chapbooks of poetry and praise, including 2 books of writing prompts, Challenges for the Delusional and More Challenges for the Delusional. More than a dozen excerpts of his memoir In Progress Next have been published as standalone pieces in literary magazines, including Looking for Thelma, the winner of the 2018 Wilt Nonfiction Chapbook Prize. The founder of Murphy Writing of Stockton University, Peter has received dozens of awards and fellowships and has led hundreds of workshops for writers and teachers. Really excited to share this interview with you. Once again, thank you for supporting Move Your Mind. And another reminder that the Move Your Mind book is now available globally. All of the links can be found at nickbracks.com/book. And you can join the Move Your Mind community by going to moveyourmind.me. Peter, thank you for making the time to come on my podcast. After me standing you up, I've actually, would have been a lot easier probably just to do this when I was in New York, in the same time zone. But I've been back in Australia, and I was actually sound asleep when we were trying to do the previous one, but I'm glad we actually got to do it. Been adjusting to the time zones.
I've been stood up by prettier people than you are, so that's okay.
Well, there you go. So at least I haven't offended you too much. But no, well, you've still come and done the interview. So no, I appreciate it, mate. I guess before we get into it, are you able to just give a bit of a background for our listeners on yourself? I mean, you've done so much, so a bit of a background on how you got to where you are now.
Sure. Just as a real overview of the life, I was born in Wales. I was a war baby, and my family moved to New York City when I was about 2 or 3. That's where I grew up. I had a tumultuous childhood, which I didn't realize was so strange at the time. I thought everybody went through that kind of stuff until I became an adult. I flunked out of 3 colleges in a row, and eventually graduated from college number 5 after I got sober. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I realized I was always a writer. I always loved writing poetry, and I decided maybe I can teach kids to write poetry. And I got myself a job teaching English and creative writing in Atlantic City on the coast of New Jersey here, and I did that for 30 years, and then it grew, and I started teaching adults as well. So about 30 years ago, I started Murphy Writing Seminars. That was a private business, and we ran large conferences, weekend conferences, tutoring, et cetera, and it grew and it grew and it grew, and now it's part of a local university. We were acquired by Stockton University of New Jersey about 10 years ago, and so that's the brief story. I've written poems. I've written. I have about 11 books and chapbooks of poetry and prose, including a couple of books on writing craft. And I think most of my writing, has been in small literary journals and around, mostly in the United States, a bunch in Britain, some in Canada. I don't know about Australia. I don't think I have anything in Australia. But that's a brief thing of who I am. Oh, one note I have to pick on you, you Australian people. There is apparently a poet in Australia who's well-known named Peter Murphy. And he's also, anthologized widely, because I have received over the years lots of requests from students asking me to talk about my poem, The Burning House. And I had to look it up and say, well, this was written by a different Peter Murphy. And as a result of that, I now use my name, Peter E. Murphy. So as a way to try to distinguish myself from that Peter Murphy. And then there's another Peter Murphy.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of them. There's one in Ireland. There's another one actually that just moved to local Philadelphia. So I have to be careful. Maybe I should trademark my name or something. I don't know. But anyway, so if Peter Murphy, the Australian poet, is alive and listening to any of his students, I like your poem, The Burning House, but I didn't write it. And I hope that you're well.
Yeah. Wow, that's I mean, that's funny, isn't it? It would be, yeah, get really confusing. So anyone listening, this is the Peter E. Murphy in Atlantic City, and we're going to talk about the books that you've done and all those, and where you can actually go to get it. But yeah, I guess like you would need to make sure that, you know, there's a distinguish between the two. But yeah, it really does sound like it's crazy how much you've done and accomplished and how many books you've written. What's the process like? Is that hard to stay self-motivated? Do you have to does doubt come into it at points? Because I'm imagining you would have to just be spending a lot of time like just really disciplining yourself to do the work you do.
Yeah, good thing I'm a loner. I spend so much of my time writing is alone. And I did most of my writing in hotel rooms before the pandemic hit. And I would go away for, first of all, in the summers, I would go to artist colonies, and that was wonderful. And in the summertime, when that was over, then I would rent a hotel room every now and then. And every month for a few days, I would write. And that's how I wrote most of the poems and most of the essays that I published. Now, when COVID hit and I couldn't go to hotel rooms, I had to establish a whole new practice. And this required some negotiation with my wife, who is a wonderful woman and loves me too much. So I have my little studio downstairs. I would come down here at 5 a.m. And the thing is that she's not allowed to bother me till either 10 o'clock in the morning or till I go upstairs. And that way I get my writing done in the morning at home. And I try to make believe I'm in a hotel room. But my part of the agreement is once I go upstairs, I can't come back down to write again. I'm done for the day. So we've been married a long time, so we've worked that out. So that's how I practice. But I write every day. I wasn't able to write every day when I was teaching full time, but I'm retired, semi-retired now, so I'm able to keep it up. But it's probably one of the most important things in my life is writing. It's kept me sane over the years. It got me sane when I was in my crazy years. I think everybody has some crazy years, and I was lucky that writing, particularly writing poetry, got me through it.
Yeah, definitely. And that technique makes sense, I guess, because doing something like that where you have to be creative, you need to be able to focus. If you sort of aren't blocking out, like what you're saying, you know, when you're at home and just locking yourself away, if you don't do that, I guess it would be too easy to get distracted in the day-to-day mechanics of life and sort of be pulled in and out, and you wouldn't be able to keep up the sort of endeavor of doing it. And I think that's probably from what I've seen. And I mean, I'm sure with the work you're doing and working with students and mentoring people, for me, it seems like one of the hardest things in this day and age is to have the ability to be able to, or have the discipline and ability to be able to focus for periods, because, you know, our minds are getting taken into 20 different directions. When do you actually make the time to go and sit and do the actual work? And that's I think that's a problem for a lot of people now.
No, it is. And then the hard part happens when you're actually there. You're facing a blank computer screen or a piece of paper. And, you know, what happens? Then all of a sudden you have to do something. So I give myself a low bar, and I basically allow myself to write as badly as I can. And I read a lot of bad stuff. So that's, but occasionally, and, it's not so bad. And I revise a lot. I'm working on a poem now that it's in its 77th draft, I think, over a period of years. I refound it. I discovered it recently, and I came back to it. So that to me is where the pleasure is, taking something I thought was dead and then reviving it and making it something that's interesting. Because if it's not interesting to me, it's not going to be interesting to anybody else. And it doesn't mean it will be interesting to anybody else. It probably won't be, but it has to at least interest me before it'll go out there for someone else.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that idea of just going there and not putting pressure on whether it has to be good or not, because I think that can be, for anything creative, it can be a real hindrance, can't it? If you're telling yourself that it has to come out in a certain way or it has to be a certain quality, you're not going to really do anything. And it's just, I think that's such a good point.
There's a definition of writer's block that I like.
So,
Where
yep.
two poets were talking, and one said he wrote every day. The other one said, "Don't you get writer's block?" And the other one said, "No." And the first said, "Why not?" And he says, "I lower my standards." And so, to me, the definition of writer's block, and I think this probably works in all of the
Yeah.
arts, is that you're setting yourself up to a higher standard you're able to do at that time. And I think a lot of people just stop because they get frustrated. I keep going, and if it's not going the way I plan it to be, then I try writing
Yeah.
it the way I haven't planned it to be, whether it's prose or poetry or my life, I guess.
Yeah. And would you say it's about also not having sort of an end goal of what has to happen, rather not thinking that I have to achieve blah, blah, blah by this point, or I have to have this much success through it? Is it more about just, I'm going to do it. This is what I do. I'm going to keep doing it forever. There's no end point to this. Because I think when we're saying that we have to have a certain level of success or wanting certain outcomes, it can put so much pressure on us that we don't actually stick to doing it.
Yeah, I think that's right. Mm-hmm. And as I said, it's I will continue doing it as long as I can.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's I guess part of my life. That's it's like having coffee or having a meal. What, I didn't write today? What's wrong? Let me go back.
Got you. Yeah. So can you tell me about the crazy years? What was happening in those years, and how did you get through those?
Yeah, that's the thing. I describe my life, my younger life. When I was in high school, I described that as early derelict period. And I started drinking and doing drugs when I was about 15, just horsing around. But then by the time I was 17, it was pretty serious. I was drunk pretty much every day when I was in high school. I managed somehow to graduate. And then, as I think I may have said earlier, when I got to college, I flunked out of another one, and then decided, I call this period after high school as mid-derelict period. And I decided to be near what I love. So I went to work at a bar for a few years, which was not a good idea. And then I mentioned I was born in Wales. I got in a lot of trouble, and I just needed to go somewhere and hide out. And I didn't know where to go. So I said, let me go back to Wales. I didn't know anything about it. I left when I was 3. And when I got to Wales, I realized nobody in the entire country knew what a screw-up I was. And I decided to stay. So I went for a few weeks, and I stayed almost a year. And I described that as late derelict period. And I finally, I guess I had I woke up in a gutter in Cardiff, Wales, outside the house I was living in. It was a commune. And I had peed myself. It was raining, and I was 21 years old, and it was like, I have to change my life. This isn't working. And I made some decisions and managed not to drink again. I had a lot of help. And then I wrote to my family in America, my father and stepmother, and asked them to take me back, and came back to the States and tried to, try to be a better person. Yeah. And I continued to write, and the poetry and the writing kept, I guess, being the focus, something I could really hold on to as I was doing that. And as I mentioned earlier, that's how I was able to find a career. Is that I read a book called Wishes, Lies, and Dreams by a poet named Kenneth Koch, and it was about teaching poetry writing to kids. I said, I think I want to do that. I want to teach poetry writing to kids, and that also focused me. What I didn't know, I mentioned, I didn't know my life was so different than anybody else's. I was abused by a priest when I was 11 years old for about a year. And what happened is he would go to the rectory every Saturday morning to pick up newspapers I was supposed to deliver, the parish newspaper, and he would wrestle with me every week. And then he started wrestling dirty. And I figured there was something wrong with me because he was a priest. He couldn't be doing this, if he was that. And I thought I was going to go to hell. And so I would go to pick up my papers, and we'd be, he would be abusing me in the morning. And that afternoon, I'd be going confessing my sins to him in the afternoon. And I didn't understand it. I was too young. But a few years later, when I began to learn more about the world and learn more about this other stuff, that's when I realized what had happened to me, what he was doing. And that's around the time when I was 15, when I started drinking. And that was a big thing. The other is that my mother died when I was young. She died when I was 7, and that set my life into a kind of downfall because I got moved around to different families. And that was also a big blow because the stability, whatever stability I had in my life was left. So I wound up going to different schools in different neighborhoods, living at a home where I was physically abused, just brutally. And I thought that was normal. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that till I was much older. Looking back, I was trying to figure out why was I so screwed up as a kid? And I was like, oh, well, maybe that has something to do with it. So I'm lucky in that the first 20 years of my life were pretty rubbish. But then I was able to, I guess, be inspired and turn it around. And the last, I'm going to show you how old I am. The last 50 years have been pretty good. In fact, just in this past March, I hit my 50th anniversary of sobriety. And not many people can do that.
Mate, well, congratulations on that. That's incredible. I mean, 50 years, yeah, like you said, that's a tough thing to do. And it's an amazing achievement. And yeah, thank you for sharing that as well. I mean, that's some really confronting and difficult things to have gone through. And I mean, that really can affect people in ways where they don't, recover from it. So I think it's incredible that you are able to talk about it, and you've also been able to work through these, childhood traumas that you had to deal with and come out and do something so positive with your life. I think it's such a good example to people that we, can do that, because I can't even imagine how difficult and confusing that all would have been for you.
Yeah. Well, I like the title of your broadcast, and I guess of your books as well, Move Your Mind, because that's what it is, in a sense. It's not allowing, at a certain point in my life, deciding not to be moved, but to make that decision to move my mind, to move my spirit, my soul, my life in a direction that's going to be more positive, a direction that, rather than looking at the world as, a foe, woe is me, the world is terrible, looking as a place where maybe I can make a difference, how I can serve others in some way. And I think that was a big turnaround when I started thinking about how I can do stuff for other people rather than for myself. That was a big turnaround, because then I realized so many other people have it so much worse. And so, what do I have to worry about it? So that was a big part of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And I know I found the same thing when whenever I found myself getting too caught up in my own mind, or too obsessing too much about different things, or spiraling, going back to trying to just simply, how can I help other people? How can I learn from other people? And it really does help. It's crazy how much, I think it's sort of what we're all probably meant to do. We're meant to help each other. And when you learn from other people and see what other people are going through, it gives you perspective on your own life as well. And it just, it makes you feel good to be able to help other people. And it's what the world needs. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that, as I said, it's been my motivating force so much. Not that I go out of my way. I'm not helping people out of the gutter and stuff like that, but just by serving, it has different meanings. Teaching is a way of service. And then, just sharing what you can. And actually by writing, when I lead writing workshops for adults, one of the things I say is that you're changing the world when you write something. You're bringing something into the world, some language, some words that have never been put together in that way before. And when you do this without an ego, it's a way, I think, of transforming the world in some way, because it transforms you, and then you will, in turn, be transformed for others. I mean, it sounds corny. It's like, ooh, very 60-ish, but I believe it. I believe that's why it happens. And I think that's why it's successful in the workshops that I do.
Well, yeah, and you're putting something out into the world that it really needs. We need more. We need people like you doing what you're doing to help people, feel things and think about things from different perspectives. And I think art and anything in that area is just, anything, creativity is so important, more important than ever in the world we live in now, when things are, so fast paced. We're over consuming in the information we absorb. We, it's such a capitalistic sort of mindset a lot of the time, and, what's next and how can I just acquire more and all that kind of thing. So, I mean, is that something that sort of drives you as well, seeing just, how much the world really needs needs this sort of stuff.
Yeah. And that whole idea of like, how much can I get? You mentioned capitalism, so I have a lot of feelings on that. I just never understood that. Just what.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your view on that?
Yeah. What is enough? I mean, I think, I just looked at the extremes of wealth, especially in this country, in the United States, and the extremes of poverty. And I don't think people with extreme wealth would suffer very much by sharing a lot of what they had with those who have so little. I think that there'd still be plenty to go around. And I'm saying that as somebody who's very comfortable, but I try to do that again, not just in my writing, but also, contributing to what I can financially, in serving, as I mentioned. But that's a big thing. I think, it's that old song from the Burt Bacharach song from the '60s. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. I don't think we see each other as a community in the world, and I very much believe that. One of the things that helped me pull me out of that gutter is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Baha'i faith, but I had met some Baha'is in Ireland a few months before I wound up in that gutter, and got in touch with some Baha'is in Wales, and I couldn't believe how kindly they were treating me, because I was living in this commune. Hair was long, I was dirty, and they treated me like I was an important person. And one of the things they said is that in the Baha'i faith, art is raised to the spirit of prayer, of services. It's a service like that. And that gave me the confidence that what I was writing was able to do that. But the Baha'i faith also talks about the extremes of wealth and poverty, that they have to be eliminated. And there's plenty to go around, but not if we're hoarding it. And I'm not saying that we should get guns and, take people's houses from them. I don't mean that at all. But I think we need to develop a way of a systemic way of just that. I sound like Robin Hood here, forgive me. Sharing more with those that don't have it. And I'm willing to do mine. I don't complain about taxes. I'm probably the only person I know who's like, oh, I don't mind. Because look what it's doing. My roads where I live are good roads. I love having people take my trash away. Yeah, I'll pay the taxes to do this. I'll also pay the taxes to help those that don't have enough. Because that's what you do. That's what life is about.
Oh, 100%. And like you're saying, it's selfish and I think, imagine if we were sort of, oh, sorry, you go.
I was going to say it's selfish because I'm getting so much out of it. That's why I said that's selfish, not in a way that I want more, but the more I do, it's corny, but it makes me better. It makes me feel better and a better person.
Look, I was literally having that conversation yesterday with someone, and we were talking about exactly what you're saying now, where I was saying, and he's got motor neuron disease, and he is dedicating his life to raising awareness about it. And we're actually working together at the moment, making a documentary, and it's sort of got mental health themes, and so much of what he's doing now, he's become in Australia really prominent in getting his message out there. And we were both talking about, I said exactly what you said, and he totally agreed, where, I've had my own struggles. And when I fell into talking about mental health, like 10 years ago, when I started just going on a stage, sharing my story, I was like, wow, this is helping people, but it's making me feel good. And I want to keep doing it. And on a selfish level, it makes you feel really good. And I always try and say to people, you should try and do things that can help others from a selfish level, because that's going to motivate you to keep doing it. And that's actually going to help people. And that's going to be then encouraging them to do the same. And if we all look at it that way, that's a very positive, outcome for everyone.
Thank you so much for supporting Move Your Mind. We're expanding the offerings of the organization, and we're tailoring everything we do to suit you guys and to try and answer to all of your needs and the questions that you send in. The book is available globally. You can find all of the links at nickbracks.com/book. And we've just released the Move Your Mind community. We've currently got a men's community group, a women's community group, a general group. We're going to be loading up other groups, and you can find all of the links at moveyourmind.me. This group's been created based on the needs of what we've heard and learnt throughout running Move Your Mind. And we have live events. We've got courses. We've got huge amounts of value, the ability to share information, share ideas. work in groups together to grow and share your learnings, to learn about different topics. You get email reminders. There's a whole lot of features in there. We're constantly updating it, and we're so excited to share it with you. You can find all of the information about it at moveyourmind.me.
Definitely. One of the features of 12-step programs is telling your story. And the telling of it makes you stronger. And when other people hear your story, it makes them stronger too. And that's I think, what you're talking about. Another part of that is the stranger that we think we're strange because of particular things that happen. But the stranger we are, the more particular we are, the more universal that becomes. And, we think that, in order to resonate with other people, we have to tell a broad story. But no, as you were saying, when you were telling your story, I'm sure it's very particular. It don't happen to you, it didn't happen to other people. And that's why people responded, because it was so recognizable, even though they didn't experience it, because they understand it.
Yeah. I mean, on a universal level, we're all similar on a, we all have our own, we all think that we're unique in our suffering, or that, what's wrong with me? Why do I struggle with certain things? When the reality is everyone has their own concerns. Everyone has their own ups and downs and things that they need to deal with. And I think the more we can actually communicate and, show vulnerability, share stories, the more we can all make sense of the world and help each other.
Yeah. You mentioned the keyword story, and we're narrative people. I think our brains are wired for that, and I think that's an important part of it. I love stories. Too much. Tell me your story.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And then when as I said, it makes me understand my life a little bit better too. But I'm always, if I'm like doing housework or walking or watering the lawn, I'm always listening to audiobooks, because I can do other stuff while listening to other people's stories like that.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, everything I'm doing, when I break it down at all, similar thing. That's what I'm really obsessed about. I just want to, learn from other people's stories. And also, I guess that's what I realized, because I was confused a few years back. I was like, oh God, I'm doing all these different things. I'm advocating for mental health, trying to build an acting career, writing a book. I'm doing a podcast. I'm trying to grow my mental health company and get programs out into the world. But then I looked at all of it and I was like, hang on, what's the core thing I'm trying to do here? And every single aspect of it, really, if you boil it down, it's just storytelling. It all comes down to that one thing. I just want to share stories, whether it is through interviewing you, whether it is through writing a book, whether it's through acting in a part or whatever. So yeah, definitely share that with you. I think it's just such a powerful thing. I think it's one of the oldest forms of learning. People at the very beginning in caveman times, you'd be around a fire, telling stories in some format. It's the way we learn. It's built into us. That's how we I think it's how we relate and how we connect with each other, through story.
Yeah. And there's that famous line, in the beginning was the word, right? So stories from the Bible, the Old Testament, myths and stuff like that. Yeah, so we continue to do it. It allows us to make meaning, and I think meaning is so important, because that's why, as humans, I'm not sure about other animals, maybe, but I just don't know. But we are meaning seeking people. We want to understand. It's a strange world. It has a lot of like lightning and thunder, and I can imagine how terrifying it must have been millions of years ago to those our ancestors. But we have other terrifying things here in our lives we're trying to understand, whether it's the natural world or the human world or the these other things. But it's also joyous too. I mean, let's face it. We'd rather hear a story. Most novels, most great literature is about overcoming some kind of difficulty. The same, I think, in movies like that. When these space invaders attack, it would be a terrible movie if they win. If the dinosaurs finally take over. But there's always some kind of victory at the end there. And I think that's what we're looking for, because when we see that in other forms, then we think, perhaps we can, we can overcome those space invaders and dinosaurs in our own lives, which are all inside of us for the most part, I think, most of them.
Definitely. And I guess reverting back to your own life and your,
I guess you're saying 50 years of being sober, and I mean, I'm sure you've had to go through. What are some of the things you had to do to get through this and to actually, be able to? And what were some of the things that were coming up? Because I'm sure there must have been so much trauma and so much
Yeah.
difficulty in working through it. What got you there?
Well, I had to remake my life. And when I returned to the United States, by that point I hadn't been drinking for about a month or two, and I couldn't go back to the bar where I was working. That seemed like a really bad idea. So I got a job driving a cab in Manhattan. You were in New York recently, in Manhattan. So I was one of those yellow cab drivers for a while, and then I worked construction for a while. And I was doing these physical jobs that I was used to. I didn't think I had any capacity to do anything more than manual labor. But that's when I was trying to just hold on, literally hold on. Let me also be very honest. I didn't know that I was an alcoholic. I've never heard the word. I heard of drunks. A lot of people in my family were drunks, but I never thought of myself as an alcoholic because that sounded so clinical, so medical. And it wasn't until years later, and I was saying I was probably sober 15 years before I went to my first 12-step meeting. And that's because I was in a situation where I desperately wanted to drink for a period of time. And I met somebody who told me about AA and about what an alcoholic is. And I said, oh, that's me. I didn't know that. I thought that was other people. And that was a big awareness on my mind, is that once I realized that also became part of my understanding, my family, my childhood, and everything else like that. I just thought I was somebody who couldn't drink and, couldn't drink anymore like that. But I knew I couldn't. That was the thing. And that point, when I was, I guess, about 35, 36-year-old, was a turning point also, because then I started talking about it, started writing about it. My wife didn't even know the situation that I had when I was younger. She knew I drank, but she didn't know the extent. None of my new friends in my new life knew any of this. And I was ashamed of it. That's why. I mean, you wake up in the gutter. It's not something like, hey, I go around, hey, guess where I spent my early life. But then once I realized and began to understand it, it gave me power to embrace it and then to write about it and this can sound corny, but to make art out of it in some way, to make poems about this. And part of that transition was that when I got in trouble, I started having drinking dreams. Where I was, they're pretty obvious. And I realized a lot of people who've been sober a while have them as well. Do you mind if I read a poem about a drinking dream? Would that be okay?
I'd love that. That would be great.
It's, let me see if I can find it here. It's, as I said, I was sober about 15 years. And the town where I live in, next to Atlantic City, is a dry town. And next to Atlantic City, the bars are open 24 hours. But I didn't realize I knew where every bar it was in the city. Not every bar, but I knew a whole lot of them. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night dreaming about where I could go to drink. And that scared the hell out of me. This is a poem called The Desire. And it's the first of these dreams that I wrote about. The Desire. Last night I dreamt I was drinking again and got drunk and walked out on the quiet life I've been living these last few years. I watched as I let my family go, the wife who understood and would not forgive, the child who clung to my loose clothing crying, "Don't go, Daddy, don't go. Take Mommy and me with you." I remember saying that too, grabbing the coat of my own father as he swung his arms around to touch me. And I trailed him as he followed his father until I let go. I fell back into sleep, into dreams. There were rivers I had to cross and recross, and fires starting in every forest I came to, and cars screeching around corners, about to go off a cliff, about to crash in a desert where I'm thirsty all the time. So by writing that, it
thank
gave
you
me
so much for reading that.
Yeah, it gave me a kind of power over it. That it was no longer going to try to influence me, but now I had this power to manipulate it. And as I said, turned it into language and into poems like that.
Yeah, so it's a way to help get it out of your head and put it onto paper and understand it, and then have it relinquish that power rather than having this thought circling in your head that you could succumb to, I guess.
Yeah. And then sending it out into the world where it gets published, and people
That's great.
Responding to it, which is amazing.
Yeah, helping other people through art. That's a beautiful thing. I think it's amazing, really, what you're talking about, and such a beautiful thing that your life and your experiences have informed poems that you're creating, and then in turn they're helping other people to actually understand similar problems and deal with it themselves. I mean, that's what it's meant to do, isn't it? I think that's why a lot of this is such an important, thing that we have in the world.
Yep.
It's great.
Keeps me honest. So that's what I used when to get through that. When I was in that period, is to do that. But I was still terrified. And as I began to understand about the my early years, that's what it was alcoholism, and it just, as I alluded to in the poem, ran through my family on both sides. It gave me I guess a lot more knowledge to work with as well. And in my teaching over the years, particularly working with high school students, as I did for so many years, so many of them, had similar backgrounds. Some were a whole lot worse. So I remember this one young woman I had. She was a budding poet, and she missed the first 3 months of school. And I was like, what happened? When she finally came back, it turns out she had been in rehab. And so we started, talking a lot together. And I'd give her passes so she would leave school early to go to these AA meetings around town, and then come back and hit her other classes, because, she could trust me, but she couldn't trust a lot of her other teachers to say, well, I need to go to a meeting. I'll be back in an hour. So that was also one of the joys that I had.
Yeah.
I wasn't working as a counselor and advisor, just as somebody to listen. And I learned a lot.
It's a 10-year anniversary of Under Bracks, and we've relaunched with the classic white pair. We've also got new styles coming out super soon. We're donating $1 from every pair to mental health, currently to 1 in 5. You can find all of this at www.underbracks.com. Someone who's
had that experience and can pass it on. Exactly. And that's what we need, a lot of that as well. No, so I think that's it. Thank you for sharing all of that. So, really, and I've spoken to so many people that have been through 12-step programs, and everyone swears by it. Is that something where it's just, I guess, the accountability, the process, I guess, like you're saying, the storytelling, having other people share their stories, has that been something you found to be of huge benefit as well?
I didn't go very long. I was at when that happened, when I was it was building up, but I was at an artist colony one year. It was the first artist colony I went to, a very well-known place called Yaddo. And I was this budding poet, and there were these very prominent writers and artists who had published so much. And I just felt they made a mistake. They shouldn't have taken me in here. I didn't belong there. But then there was also a whole lot of drinking going on, and the pressure. I didn't quite know how to do it yet, but I just was feeling so much like I gotta do something. I have to, and that's when I met somebody who was going to a meeting, and they took me. And I didn't go after that stay. I was there for about a month, and I went probably for 3 weeks, almost every night. But when I got home and I was in the security of my family, my Baha'i community, I didn't feel the need to go, the urge to go, but I always kept it open. So it has worked a lot for others, but in a sense, the Baha'i community also gave me that, because we didn't tell stories in the same way. We do have a kind of support where, we're able to, I guess, help each other in that way. We don't have clergy, which was a big thing for me when as I mentioned, being abused by a priest when I was younger. So when I came across the Baha'i faith and, didn't have a clergy, it's like, well, I don't believe in God. I believe in alcohol, but, these guys don't have a clergy. Maybe there's something going on here. And that really was a benefit for me.
Yeah. So that really was a bit of a turning point as well. No, well, thank you for sharing that. And you were telling me before we started, you've got a new memoir that you're working on and coming out. What projects do you have at the moment that are coming out? And what can we share with my listeners?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I spent I was primarily a poet, but some friends said I should tell my story. This goes back maybe 10, 15 years ago. So I started writing essays about my early life and publishing them in various journals. And I realized, oh my gosh, this is turning into a book. And it took me about 10 years and many, many drafts and many, many titles. And I finally finished a memoir about those early years. It goes from the time I was, my early life in Wales as well as the United States till I turned 21. And it's called Once Upon a Time You Lived in a Castle. And it has a little literal castle in it because where I lived in Wales was a city in Newport. And we lived at a bar, of course, a pub my family ran called the Windsor Castle Hotel. And it's where I started my life in this place of alcohol. And later on, when I returned to Wales, when I was 20 years old, I spent time there. And also visited it years later when I got sober, just to go back and see what I could discover about my mother's life and my family and something like that. So it's believe it or not, it's humorous. When I tried to tell the story, it's not woe is me, and it's an account of those years. It's right now. It's I finished writing it about several months ago, and it's out seeking an agent, which in search of a publisher. So I've been sending it out to various agents, and we'll see what happens. So I'm hoping that somebody will decide to take an interest in it and pitch it to a publisher, and who knows, maybe a year or two from now it'll be out, and I can come back and talk about where you can buy this book. But who knows? It might be 10 years, it might be 20. In which case, I'm not sure I'll be here, but maybe you can plug it on my behalf, Nick. If it comes out posthumously.
Well, look, let's hope that you're still alive when it comes out, and I will plug it if you're not here. But no, I'd much rather just get you back on here and we can talk about it when it comes out. That would be a better way.
I think so too, but,
is that hard being patient? Yeah. Is that difficult being patient with the whole process? Because I found that hard myself with my book. The process of getting it out there. Then once it was out there, it was my first book I've ever done, and I had expectations of, I want it to do this and do that, and then you're trying to promote it, and then you're like, oh, I can't really control much of what's happening here, and to sort of just allow it to happen. Is that hard?
It's hard, and my first book of poems came out when I was in my 50s. I've been writing so that was like 35 years after I started writing. But then in the 15 or so years since then, 10 more books have come out. So they're all with small publishers. One is in the Mideast, in Doha, but the others are in the United States. So I'm patient, and I'm used to rejection. I see rejection as a kind of merit when I send work out, because a lot of people give up, and I don't give up at all. I can have hundreds of rejections for something, and I'll keep sending it out if I believe in it. Now, I also revise it if I don't think that it's working. But so patience, I have to be patient because there's no other solution. Either you're patient or you give up, or maybe you do something stupid. I don't want to do something stupid by underselling myself. I've done it a few times. I realized, okay, that was a mistake. Don't be stupid. Be patient, and see what happens. We all look at in terms of writers. We look at the ones who win the Pulitzer Prizes, the ones who win the bestsellers and stuff like that. But so few writers achieve that level of prominence. Most writers, they have, I don't want to say small lives. Our lives are huge. Our lives are big, but they don't acquire the thousands, hundreds of thousands of readers that do, and that's fine. I think it'll find my work, seems to find its audience somewhere along the line. It finds its readers, and I think that'll happen with the book too. At some point. It's only been going out for a few months now, so I'm patient. Next year, we'll see what happens.
I think that's a great point, and I love what you're saying as well about rejection, because that is really the only way that you can sustain doing anything in this area. And in my field with a lot of actors, they, the rejection gets to you and you stop, or you take it personally and you can't sustain it. The only way you can really have a sustained career is to look at the rejection as, a stepping stone, and it's one step closer to where you want to go, and not putting that pressure on it. You're just going to keep doing it forever. And because like you said, if you look at it on a logical standpoint, you either have to do that process or not do it at all. What are you going to do? So just
keep putting it out there, and eventually something will happen. We don't have to have. I think patience is so important. Something I keep reminding myself as well.
And I'm sure with acting as well, the joy you get out of the process of doing it is, sometimes when something is published or something like that, I don't know what the equivalent would be in acting, I guess, but it's sort of like underwhelming compared to the actual creation of it. When you're developing a character, perhaps when you're acting or if you're doing stand-up, creating that is one thing. The buzz you get when performing it is another. But without the creation part, it doesn't happen, and that's
exactly
where the beauty is.
Yeah, without the creation, it doesn't exist, does it?
Mm-hmm. And I think if somebody doesn't enjoy that part of it, then why are they doing it?
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying, if somebody doesn't enjoy that part of it, the creation part, why bother? Mm-hmm.
If they don't enjoy it, yeah, it's what's the point of doing it? And where can we send our listeners if they want to learn more about you, or they want to, have a look at your books and everything else? Where can they go?
Sure. I have 2 websites. My personal website is peteremurphy.com. And there's a section on there where they can read some of my published work, both prose and poetry online. And there's also a section where it has my books and where they can buy them. And I'll ship them all over the world. That's fine. And then the professional workshop I have is Murphy Writing of Stockton University. And the easy way to get to that is murphywriting.com. And that lists a lot of the workshops that we do, not just in the United States. We do them online, of course, like everybody else these days, but also in Europe. We haven't been there since before COVID, and we hope to get back next year. But we've been running workshops for people that are beginning writers, as well as people with a lot of experience. And my goal when I lead a workshop is make it to be an ego-free experience. I don't care how much you've published or if you're writing for the first time. Everybody in the workshop is going to improve in the time that we have together, whether it's an afternoon or whether it's a week in Wales or in Spain or other places that we go. So that's what we do there. So at murphywriting.com, you can find out more about that. And we also have a lot of resources on the website for writers. We run free programs as well. We have one that runs every Wednesday night. It's called the Write-In, and it's a curated program where one of our colleagues basically throws out a writing prompt online, and people write for an hour. And at the end of the hour, they share what they wrote. And this is something that we just love doing because it's something that is easy for us to do. It's free for people. And we have people that participate in this from all over the world. So it's a great way to do that. We have free programs we do locally here in New Jersey as well, which I'm not sure too many of your listeners will be will be able to come. But who knows? Maybe we'll that. We haven't been to Australia. Maybe we'll go to Australia sometime. We're looking to expand.
Got to get you over to Australia at some point.
Yeah,
exactly. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And for everyone listening, we'll put the link to your website in the show notes. So if you want to look up any of Peter's work, the link will be in the notes of the show. So please go on that, have a look, buy his books, and support what he's doing. So we finish every episode with 5 closing questions. These can be short answers, just whatever comes to mind. So they're sort of just 5 quick closing questions. But the first one is, what did you like most about your childhood?
My imagination. I think my imagination, because I had a lot of I lived inside my head as a kid, so I would say that.
My name's Nick Bracks, and I'm a storyteller who has dedicated my entire adult life to creating positive conversations around mental health. In recent years, discussions around mental health have become less taboo and entered the mainstream vernacular. I've delivered over 1,000 mental health seminars around the globe, including several TED Talks, and I believe we all have a story to tell. In my book, Move Your Mind, I cover my story and stories from people that inspire me, as well as insights from world-leading mental health experts. This book will help you to learn how to recognise mental health issues before they become a problem. Use your personal challenges as motivators, take ownership of your well-being, and create new daily habits that increase happiness and reduce stress. Yeah,
great. That's great. Yeah. what do you think is the biggest burden on mental health in society at the moment?
The what's the word? Not stigmatism. That's the eye disease. The fear that people will judge you, and the fear of getting help because of that, and also the fear that whatever help you get won't work. I think these are three things. In the United States, we have a particular one. It's just can't afford it. We don't have the medical capacity that other countries have. I believe in Australia you have it's easier. So in the United States, that's a big one too. I have a number of friends that have been, particularly during COVID, trying to get help.
Yeah,
and they can't afford it. So that's a big one here. That was just too many of a few words, but yeah, stigma. That's the word I was looking for. The stigma.
No, that's good. I agree with you. No, I think it's a great answer, and I really do agree. What would you say is your personal definition of happiness?
It's when I'm sharing. When I'm teaching writing, when I'm writing, that's for me what it is. It's fulfilling. I wish I could say, oh, being with my family, being with my grandson, being with Southfield, that too. But, it's to me, it's the idea of creating something and then sharing it with others. That's how it works for me.
That's beautiful. But I love it that what you're doing and what you've been doing for your whole life pretty much, and what you're doing even now is the thing that brings you the biggest source of happiness. That's amazing. I mean, how many people can actually say that? There's not a lot. So it's such an incredible thing.
I'm very lucky.
So I've got two more here. Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. I've got two more here. What would you say? What are you most afraid of?
Dying, of course, even because it's such a big unknown. Being greedy in that I want to live as much as I can, as long as I can, without a debilitating disease at the end. So that's what it would be. My stepmother recently died of Alzheimer's, and the last few years of her life were difficult for everybody. So I would say that's my big fear right now, is being in a position where I'm not able to take care of myself and being a burden on others. That's it.
Yeah. And final one, what would you say you're most proud of?
My daughter. What a fine human being she is. So a shout out to Amanda Murphy Compass, who is a great human being. She's a terrific servant. She's a wonderful mother. She's a great daughter who is constantly trying to get me to improve my life, even at this point. So I think I'm most proud of her. If I did nothing else in my life, that would be enough to go by. We did good work, my wife and I.
Beautiful. Well, no, thank you so much for sharing, Peter, and thank you for coming on. I'm sure our listeners are going to get so much value out of hearing this interview. Again, for anyone listening, please check out his work. He's incredibly talented, and I feel really lucky to have you on here. So thank you again.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it.
Thanks to Peter Murphy for joining me today for Move Your Mind. And just a reminder that the Move Your Mind book can now be found globally at nickbracks.com/book. And you can also join the Move Your Mind community at moveyourmind.me. And we've also released Under Bracks. We're donating $1 from every pair to mental health, currently to 1 in 5. And you can find that at www.underbracks.com.